Hey.
Good morning, good afternoon, good midday.
Hello.
Friday, everyone. How you doing, Alicia?
I'm doing well. How is everybody?
I'm doing great. It's a nice, relaxing Friday. Lots to do, but
I
um,
know.
just checking things off my list, ready to round up the week.
Same.
So we're going to give everyone a few minutes to come on here. Super excited for number 23 of our free photo tip Fridays. Can you believe we've been doing this for 23 weeks?
No.
And actually, we did it for 12 weeks before that. We just called them creative storytelling tips. So this has been awesome, guys. We are loving this. And we have some really exciting tips for you today. I have about half a dozen. I had fun going through old photos. If you're with us now and you've ever done this, tell me in the chat box. Hi, Diana. Hi, Kelly. I have had a blast opening my old hard drives over the last few weeks. I don't think I've told you this, but I would plug in an old hard drive, open up my old Lightroom catalog, and just see how I edited photos 5 years ago versus how I look at them now.
Yeah.
And I started re-editing some of my old travel photos. So it was fun kind of reminiscing and looking for photos to share today.
Yeah, I do that from time to time, but I end up not editing them, which I probably should because my editing habits back then were completely different than now.
Yeah. I look at some of my edits and I'm like, what was I doing?
I know.
So guys,
Changes.
today our word of the week, if you joined us on our Instagram lives on Wednesday, we give the same word we're going to use today. We share on Wednesdays, and we like to use these words to bring some wisdom. We call it Wednesday wisdom, but really just to anchor us into the moment in the middle of the week and remind us what it means to live wonderful. So it's been really fun each week to take that same word and then translate it into our visual stories here on Friday Photo Tips. And this week's word, Alicia said it perfectly. At the beginning, we were like, I couldn't get it going. Like I didn't have this great momentum about how to explain or dive into it. So that word we finally got into, we created a routine or this feeling of flow with it. And that word was patterns. So patterns in life, patterns in nature, patterns in our thoughts, right? We talked about all kinds of different things. But today we're going to talk about how patterns show up visually, how we can look for them before we take the shot. When we're shooting, I tend to find patterns, and the whole idea here is when you can incorporate a pattern, or another word you can think of as repetition. When you can incorporate that into your image, it's going to make a more compelling shot. It's going to draw the viewer's eye in more because repetition creates synergy. Is that the right word? Synergy? Is that the word? Yeah. It feels graceful, right? It makes it easier for our eyes to kind of flow through all the elements that surround those patterns. So I have a couple shots to bring up, but I wanted to hear from Alicia. What I don't know if you have pictures to share or if you have any thoughts on patterns when it comes to.
No, this is really difficult for me because I don't necessarily, I'm not aware of patterns, I guess, when I'm shooting.
Yeah.
Or maybe I am subconsciously, but you even just said like you look for them. I'm never looking for them unless it's subconsciously. I don't even know I'm doing it. But
I think it's the idea is because I don't think I look for them naturally anyway. It's in hindsight. It's like I'll start rearranging a shot and for some reason it feels better. It feels more compelling. And then later I look at it, or like just today going through and finding pictures, I'm like, oh, it's the patterns that I picked up that made me like this angle better or look down this, walkway differently. So
Yeah, or I'm just not aware of
yeah,
them, and it's a lot of practice to become aware of them. So when I was looking back on some photos just now before we get on, I feel like mine are gonna be so basic compared to
you
yours.
guys hear her right now? Do you hear her losing confidence in herself? She's probably about to show you these amazing photos.
They're very obvious patterns, I'd say. So if
Well,
you
this
want
is
to show
good.
you my obvious patterns, then
Actually, this is a good thing because
yeah.
um, I want our listeners and viewers to feel like maybe it's not obvious,
Mhm.
Some things we do want to feel really simple and just click. But other things will take time, and there's that balance of going, this isn't feeling natural, but I'm still going to stick with it and go looking for these things. Um, so how about I bring up a couple and then, or do you want to go first?
I feel like I should go first.
Okay, go for it. Go for it.
I don't
I'm
know.
excited to see what you have to bring up because I think I think there's a lot of different ways we can talk about patterns.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what comes to your mind.
Mine are from Costa Rica, and I
Okay.
think we've seen a few of them, but to me,
That's
they're
okay.
fairly obvious.
Hey, and before you get started, those of you who are listening in, I don't know if I've ever said this before in our free photo tip Fridays, but the whole point of having multiples of these is that you put multiple tips into one shot. So Alicia might be showing us a picture we've already seen before, but it's going to have lots of different storytelling techniques involved in one picture. Oh, that is awesome. Yeah, of course
So,
that's
I love textures. I love the little things, so this was just a hammock, it just it caught my attention, and I photographed it a couple different ways, but there's obvious pattern going on here.
You have the rope, right? That's obvious. But you said a key word that I wasn't even aware we were going to bring up, but texture.
Mm-hmm.
So texture, when we look at the fine details of something and we think of the texture, looking at texture is us looking at repetition. We're looking at repeated patterns of a fabric or something to that, in this case, a rope.
Mm-hmm.
So texture on anything is a great way to emphasize the story you're trying to tell. And not only the rope itself, you've got the lines that are the hammock, but the rope, an individual rope has spirals, which is a pattern.
Oh, yeah.
And you have the texture on the rope you see over and over through your frame.
Mm-hmm.
You also have color being repeated.
Yeah.
See the purple popping in the bottom right and then picking up again further down. So even just maybe you came across this and loved the texture, like you said, right? It drew you in. But I'm sure you took a bunch of shots, right? You didn't just take one picture and walk away.
I think I did, but I didn't load them in here. But
that's okay. My point is,
one.
You had texture kind of draw you in, and then you tweaked it and found other ways to incorporate repetition and patterns. And guys, notice where your eye goes first. Obviously, this is a very shallow depth of field, so our eye goes right to those two crossing ropes there in the bottom left a little bit. But notice how your eye does move through the rest of the frame and then it comes back to that, right? That's that shallow depth of field.
Yeah, I mean, this is playing with aperture and playing with texture and patterns, I guess. It's fun to do something as simple as this.
Totally. And that's another key word is like simplifying. If we cut out all the noise and craziness and busyness of a shot, and we just simply ask our minds to look for pattern, look for repetition, we can simplify our stories. And one of my favorite photographers that I follow right now, actually, if you guys want to join, and we're always talking about our workshops, but there's a photographer that I love named Chris Burkhardt. Look him up. He is amazing. I know I talk about him often, but he's got a great workshop coming out right now called The Business of Photography. It's an online workshop you can join. Anyway, one of the key, I've taken this workshop before in person. He's hosting it online right now. So it's, you know, almost a tenth of the price. He says something in this workshop, and he's very like nonchalant, right? Like you're waiting for this intense high-end photographer to like give you all these great tips, and he's very like, meh, whatever, I'm just shooting. He's very nonchalant. So he throws this picture up on the the PowerPoint presentation, the presentation screen. And it's this gorgeous silhouette of a girl surfing, and you can't see her face, and the sun is setting in the background. So you've got this orange and the blue at the bottom, and just this silhouette of a person on a surfboard. And he goes, "Why do you like that picture?" And he's looking at it like it's not that big of a deal. And he goes, "You know why you like it? Because it's simple, because it's timeless, because because any human being in the world can relate to it." Mm-hmm. So I bring that story up because you're right. Sometimes it is really good to get out of our patterns. Another way to think of patterns, it's good to get out of our normal way of shooting or the normal subjects that we shoot.
Yeah.
And kind of break down, get back to simple basics, to look for those more graceful, powerful shots that really don't need a lot of stuff to make them great photographs, you know?
I mean, these shots that I was just bringing up, I got to close this one up.
Yeah, bring up some more.
They're just, I think I was just walking around and I was like, oh, that's cool. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just simple, very, okay, raindrops on a big leaf in Costa Rica, you know? And I think I shot it from underneath too, but this was a little bit more interesting. Just having fun. Like this was just having fun. Like I wasn't.
Nature has the most incredible patterns to look for. I mean, the raindrops add to this, but even just the veins in the leaf.
Right.
And the angle you're shooting at. Guys, when you're looking for patterns, if you see something that has a pattern, right? A flower, a leaf, a bark, texture, anything with texture, seats, rows of seats, anything that has patterns. The next thing I want you to do when you go to photograph patterns is look for a way to create more depth. Get down at an angle where you can use these patterns to add repetition. So see how she's got that shallow depth of field again? It kind of lets your eye move through all of these patterns. I love that. Yeah. That reminds me of Bali for some reason, just the wetness and the big leaf.
Costa Rica was just wet where I was.
I love it too, Kelly. Yeah.
Damp, but it felt so good and cleansing. So I wanted to capture that too, you know, it was an everyday, which downpour on us, you know, at certain times. So that was part of it, you know, and there's beautiful, I'm guessing, I could only imagine that you're going to show us a flower picture, but I don't know. So,
well, you know, it's interesting too that you I love doing these and sharing our photos with everybody listening in, because we're still learning too. So it's always great when we have been recently showing a lot of our portrait work. And then here, when it comes to patterns, you're sharing pictures where you actually stepped out of your normal realm and didn't even realize you were creating patterns, but you were off just exploring, letting the world kind of come to you. And it simplified the beauty of these shots.
This experience for sure took me out of my comfort zone. And I love doing that. I want to do it often. So it wasn't enough people really, but it was more nature and what you're used to, landscapes and stuff like that. So
you want me to go now?
Yeah, I guess so. I had a rock picture, but no, we're good.
All right. So this is cool because I have totally different shots to show, so you guys can see a different perspective of how can we use patterns. Okay, so I'm gonna bring up my Lightroom, I think, and those of you who have joined us before on these, maybe you've seen my Lightroom or you've seen Lightroom before, but if you haven't and you're not sure, excuse me for a second, I'm trying to get the shared screen up. Here we go. Lightroom is a program that can you see the screen there?
Yes.
So Lightroom is a really powerful program that helps us organize our files and edit our files. So we're actually going to be teaching 2 comprehensive courses about Lightroom at the end of the month during Warrior Weekend. So if you've never used it before, I highly recommend looking into it. And if you have, you can see what I've done here is I've just grabbed from all my travels. I went and grabbed a bunch of pictures and I threw them into a collection. So this is something we're going to talk about in the advanced Lightroom class. But if you are already using Lightroom, I just like to share that when we do these free photo tip Fridays and I just want to organize a quick collection to show you guys, I'll just go grab the ones from all my folders, create virtual copies of them, and then I stick them in a collection folder. So I'm gonna flip through these quickly first and see if you guys just in your own minds can draw your eyes in and notice quickly what is the pattern here in these shots. So I'll just bring them up kind of quickly, leave them up for a second or two. And all of them have more than one thing creating a pattern or a texture, but they all do it very differently. That's kind of the same picture. And again, we're like Alicia said at the beginning, we're not necessarily looking for the pattern. It kind of comes to us, right? We tend to see it in hindsight, and it works to help tell the story. So sometimes it's a shape, sometimes it's a color, sometimes it's a texture. That was a crazy pattern. Talk about being scared while you're shooting. Can you guys see that photo? I thought being on the side of a cliff and being afraid of heights was scary. No, shooting bees is much scarier.
I bet.
So, if you guys are with us and you want to type into the chat box, I'd love to hear from you guys if you saw something different in these shots that you hadn't thought of before when it comes to pattern. And I'm just going to start at this first one. So the pattern here is obviously the color and the walls. Do you see the lights on the walls? So, yeah. and then you have the staircase. So you definitely have these leading lines bringing you in. And that's another tip we've brought up to you guys before, but not just the lines, you have this repetition of lights and the color red pulling you in here. In this case, look at the texture on the wall. So you've got this texture, and really what I love about some of these shots is the framing itself is repeated. So looking through doorways or looking at frames, when you think about your image or your scene, look for areas where the elements in your scene can help create other frames, and that in itself becomes a repetitive pattern. Mm-hmm. So walkways, the benches have the lines. You've got the sunburst coming through there, creating the shadows that are their own lines. These are all, that word texture keeps coming up for me. So even the texture in the trees there, look for these simple elements in nature, but also in man-made structures. So in this case, you've got the rocks. But the thing I like about this shot that's repetitive is actually the texture in the water. Do you see the reflection in the water pulling you through? So patterns that are created by the reflections are a big thing to look for. Guys, the real point here is everything you look at, I guarantee you can see that it's a part of a pattern. And the universe is made up of patterns. If you guys have ever heard of the Fibonacci spiral, that's the idea of how a shell is created or a flower, that everything is in perfect repetitive pattern constantly. Mm-hmm. So this one I brought in here because obviously the pattern is the flowers. But again, you see the color is repeated, that color orange or that color pink. And I got down low and shot through the scene, creating more depth where now I'm able to pick up those colors from the foreground, midground, and the background of the shot. Pink again. In this case, the framing. Do you see the color of the dog, the color of the bench, the color of the wooden beams? So that color comes through, but then you also have the framing of the walkway creating a pattern through the shot.
The floor as well.
What's that?
The floor as well.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, the floor has a pattern on it. So most man-made things create a pattern, and almost everything in nature is going to create some sort of a repetitive pattern or texture. You can, and when we think of texture, guys, we think of getting really close to something so that you feel for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
This one's pretty obvious, but I probably took 50 pictures of these, you know, just right over top, high priority shooting. And I picked the one where most of the bees were in a line. Funny story here. These are all worker bees, honeybees. And the reason they're all in a line right at the edge of the beehive is because they're protecting the queen bee that's in there. So they're actually like an army. They build a wall of bees at the front of the opening. So that was a fun way to create pattern.
Okay.
Color here again. Guys, the purple, pulling the purple through, but also if you're out there shooting for brands or businesses or products, think about the logo and the layout of how you're showcasing these images. So these ladies are in movement, right? There's a lot of shots here, but what mattered to my story here was capturing her logo on her shirt, the Lowe's logo, the Habitat for Humanity and that International Women's Day. So see how that in itself is repeated through the shot. That had a big part of creating an image for the Lowe's brand in this picture, not just the color itself in the shirts. This one's pretty obvious, right? You have the repetition of the droplets, just like Alicia showed in her picture, but it wasn't until the 5th or 6th shot where, again, I got lower and found the other branch in the background creating the same effect. And now I have even more repetition with all these circles, that bouquet look going on in the background. So there you have it, guys. I like to change things up every once in a while when we do these free photo tip Fridays, because I don't want you guys to feel like you're going to get the same experience from us, right? So instead of one picture, kind of talk about a lot all at once for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope patterns will click for you differently now when you go out and shoot. We don't have too much going on this weekend. I'm actually going out to shoot a newborn baby shoot in Jacksonville. I'm excited for that. Another newborn. Lots of babies being born.
I've got so many ways.
Do you have any fun shoots or adventures coming up this weekend?
I mean, I've been doing a lot of real estate. Yeah, nothing.
So HDR
yet, huh?
HDR photography.
HDR, a lot of editing.
That'll be fun.
But yeah. So, but I love these. These are great. It kind of we're learning as well, guys, and it's all about learning. It's all about growing. Exactly. It's all about being self-aware of everything. So
whatever you're doing this weekend, get your cameras out, go on an adventure, find something unique to shoot, start looking for patterns and repetition and textures, and join us next week. We got a whole nother photo tip for you. And don't forget, guys, at the end of this month, we are hosting Warrior Weekend. You want to come be a full-blown photo warrior with Alicia and I. She's coming down to Orlando. And we're going to be teaching 4 workshops, 2 photography workshops, and 2 photo editing workshops, the 29th and 30th. You can check them out at livewonderful.com/Warrior Weekend. And heads up, guys, tomorrow's the last day for early bird special. So these classes are going to go up to $95 a piece, which is their standard price, but right now they're only $75 a piece. Go check those out. And have a great weekend, guys. Go out there, live wonderful.
Great weekend.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys soon. Bye.